What would you do if you were trapped in a fortress atop a cliff, surrounded by thousands of enemy soldiers getting closer every day? This is how the Siege of Masada began, one of the most gripping stories of resistance in ancient history. Stay tuned to hear this incredible story, and if you stick around until the end, you'll find out the unexpected fate of the besieged. The Siege of Masada took place during the final days of the First Jewish-Roman War, a conflict that began in 66 CE due to the growing unrest of the Jewish people under Roman rule. The situation in Judea had been tense for decades, with high taxes, religious pressure, and increasing inequality. The war culminated in the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem in 70 CE, which devastated the Jewish community. However, small pockets of resistance persisted throughout the region, with Masada being the last stronghold of this rebellion. Masada, built by King Herod the Great between 37 and 31 BCE, was a fortress situated on an isolated plateau in the Judean desert near the Dead Sea. The plateau rises about 450 meters above the surrounding terrain, with steep cliffs making it nearly inaccessible. The fortress was equipped with grain storages, palaces, Roman baths, and an advanced cistern system to collect and store water, making it a self-sufficient refuge designed to withstand long sieges. After the fall of Jerusalem, a group of Jewish radicals known as the Sicarii sought refuge in Masada. This group, led by Eleazar ben Yair, was known for their guerrilla tactics and attacks on Romans and Jewish collaborators. Around 960 Sicarii, along with their families, found in Masada a place where they could resist until the very end. For them, surrender was not an option. In 72 CE, Roman governor Lucius Flavius Silva was sent with the 10th Legion Fretensis to take Masada. The 10th Legion was a veteran military unit known for its siege warfare expertise and engineering skills. Silva arrived with about 10,000 men, including Roman legionaries, auxiliary troops, and Jewish slaves. His objective was clear: crush the last Jewish resistance in the region. The Romans knew that Masada was a formidable fortress, nearly impregnable due to its location atop a cliff. A frontal attack would have been disastrous, so Silva opted for a strategy of encirclement. He ordered the construction of 8 camps around the base of the plateau, completely sealing off any possible escape routes. The Romans also built a circumvallation wall about 3 kilometers long around Masada to ensure that no one could enter or leave. Inside Masada, the Sicarii had a key advantage: they were well stocked. Herod had built storerooms filled with grain, oil, and wine, enough to sustain the defenders for months. Additionally, the advanced cistern system could store up to 40,000 cubic meters of water, collected from the sparse desert rains. While the Romans waited outside, the defenders could hold out for a long time. When Silva realized that a prolonged siege would not be effective, he changed tactics. He decided to build a colossal siege ramp that would allow his troops to breach the fortress. He chose the western side of Masada, where the slope was less steep. The terrain there, though rugged, was accessible enough to begin constructing a structure that could support the weight of siege machines. The ramp slowly began to take shape. It was built using captured Jewish slaves and Roman soldiers, who worked day and night under the blistering desert heat. The ramp stretched about 114 meters long, with a gentle enough incline to allow the passage of a battering ram. The Romans reinforced the ramp with wood and stone, ensuring it could bear the weight of their heavy siege engines. This titanic effort took several months. During the long siege, life inside Masada continued within the confines of the fortress. The Sicarii carried out their daily tasks, but always kept a watchful eye on the Romans' progress. Their routine included prayers and meetings in the synagogue, but there was a constant worry about when the final day would come. The population knew they had no place to escape. As the Romans built the ramp, the defenders of Masada devised strategies to try to slow the advance. From the top of the fortress, they hurled stones and fired arrows at the Roman workers, hoping to impede the construction. However, these attempts were largely ineffective due to the protection provided by the dirt wall the Romans had built at the base of the ramp. The ramp's construction was slow due to the challenging terrain and the extreme desert heat. The Romans had to transport large amounts of earth and stone to continue raising the structure. For months, the Sicarii watched as the distance between them and their enemies grew smaller and smaller, while the Roman advance seemed unstoppable. One of the main challenges the Romans faced was supplying water to their troops. Being in the desert, the Romans had to rely on constant caravans from more fertile areas to keep their army hydrated. In contrast, the defenders of Masada did not suffer from a lack of water thanks to Herod's cisterns, which allowed them to survive during the long siege. During the course of the siege, Silva received reinforcements from nearby regions to maintain troop numbers and ensure the operation's success. These reinforcements brought more supplies and tools to speed up the ramp's construction and further tighten the fortress blockade. Masada was now completely isolated. The Roman camp was carefully organized to endure the long siege. They built facilities to store supplies, rest areas for the troops, and strategic watchpoints to prevent any attempts by the Sicarii to flee. The Roman army operated with relentless discipline, keeping constant pressure on the defenders. Despite being well stocked with food and water, morale inside Masada began to decline as the Roman ramp inched closer to the fortress. Eleazar ben Yair tried to keep the Sicarii's spirits high, encouraging his followers with speeches of resistance and reminding them of the importance of their fight. However, many inside the fortress knew that defeat was inevitable. Finally, in the spring of 73 CE, the ramp was complete. Silva gave the order to launch the final assault. The battering ram was pushed up the ramp to Masada's walls, and it began to pound the gates with force. Despite the Sicarii's efforts to repair the damage and slow the advance, the walls eventually gave way under the repeated blows of the ram. The defenders knew the end was near. Although the defenders of Masada knew they could not stop the Romans, they continued to fight desperately. They attempted to hurl rocks and other projectiles from the top of the walls to delay the ram's advance. But as the walls began to collapse, the Sicarii realized that their fate was sealed. With the walls on the verge of falling and the Romans ready to invade the fortress, Eleazar ben Yair gathered his followers. In the midst of chaos and despair, Eleazar spoke to them about the terrible consequences of being captured by the Romans. The women would be raped, the children enslaved, and the men executed. For Eleazar, there was only one honorable option: to die rather than face that humiliation. That night, while the Romans prepared their final assault, the defenders organized their last line of defense. But inside the walls, the debate over what to do continued. Aware that they could not withstand a direct attack, the Sicarii prepared for the worst. But what happened that night was something no one could have predicted. At dawn the next day, the Romans finally broke into the fortress. They entered, ready for a bloody battle, but what they found was a completely different scene. Masada was silent. There was no resistance, no battle cries, only the wind echoing through the ruins. The mystery of what had happened the night before was soon revealed. The defenders of Masada had made an extreme decision. Instead of surrendering, they chose to take their own lives. According to historian Flavius Josephus, the men of Masada first killed their families, then committed suicide among themselves, leaving a few to execute the last survivors. Only 2 women and 5 children who had hidden in a cistern survived to tell the Romans what had happened. When the Romans realized what had occurred, they were shocked by the magnitude of the collective suicide. They were used to facing enemies who fought to the death or surrendered under their power. But here there were no victors. Masada had become a tomb of brave men who chose death over slavery. With the fall of Masada, the Jewish resistance was completely crushed. Roman control over Judea was solidified, and the rebellion was extinguished. However, the psychological impact of what happened at Masada would resonate for centuries. For the Roman Empire, it was an empty victory, but for the Jewish people, Masada became a symbol of resistance and sacrifice.